watched a video this week about this organization called Strong Towns. It's a nonprofit that celebrates towns that have made small, incremental changes that make them healthy and sustainable. There's a lot of towns that are struggling, small and large, towns that have lost manufacturing, a manufacturing base that the entire local economy was based on. Lots of towns don't have affordable housing. That's an issue in the Kansas City area. I know it's definitely an issue in Lee Summit. There are a lot of small towns that have a lot of debt that's kind of drowning them from making new investment. There's transportation issues. Public transportation is not something that we have that's fantastic throughout the metro, so we can relate to that. But all of these issues that go into a town's decline, those things are complex, right? And it's multifactorial on whether or not a town is sustainable for the long term. Now, what happens to a town when they experience lots of these issues for a long time? The town starts to decline. A sense of hopelessness can set in, and anger and frustration. All of those are natural responses. Marion, Ohio, which was featured in this video, I'm not familiar with Marion, but maybe some of you are, is a town that has struggled for decades because of all of these factors and more. It was once really prosperous, but has lost some, not all, but some of its manufacturing and has started to decline from there. The small town feel, their business district in their downtown area, it declined. Drug addiction rose exponentially in the opioid crisis. People were frustrated at what had happened to their beloved community. And so in 2013, a man was fed up, like he was fed up. And so he had 800 yard signs made, and maybe you guys saw this on social media back then, but he had 800 yard signs made and put up around town, and it said, "Heroin is Marion's economy." Now that jump-started some conversations, as you can imagine. But even though there were some problems in the town, people were committed to staying there and make it their home and finding real solutions that would work for their area. So some things began to move. People began to have conversations, real conversations about these issues. People started to take action on the things that were wrong and turn them around. But they weren't big, flashy things that needed outside investment. They didn't look to a single big corporation to come in and restart manufacturing jobs. There weren't state or federally funded grants. They were small things led by the people who lived there. Since 2018, they've welcomed 50 new businesses to their downtown district. They've opened the first drug recovery house in 40 years within a 90-mile radius. They build tiny homes and provide wraparound services for the folks who live in them. They have new nonprofits that provide meals, and those signs that said "Heroin is Marion's economy" has been replaced with signs that say "Hope is Marion's economy." Now, you might be wondering why I'm talking about small town revitalization and Marion and things like that, but I think you guys have already beaten me to it, right? There might be a lesson here for churches. Let's hear from Matthew 13 this morning. Jesus put before them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches." Now, we can go anywhere in Christian circles, like across all variables, right? Across denomination lines, across age groups, across racial groups, across theological spectrums. We can go to all Christian circles. We have one thing in common, one conversation. Besides that, we all love Jesus. Like, besides that conversation. And that is a conversation about how the church is doing terrible, how the church is failing, how the church is dying. And, to some extent, that's true. I've been part of some of those churches in the past. I've seen them. I've heard about them from colleagues. Not long ago, somebody was telling me about a congregation. Our denomination here in Kansas City has a huge old building. It's got 8 members, right? For what it's worth, though, I don't think the church is dying. I don't think the church is dying. I think there are some congregations that have a life cycle, and they are at the end of that life cycle. But I don't think the church as a whole is dying. However, there's certainly no denying that the church is in a huge paradigm shift. Things are different than they used to be. Phyllis Tribble, writer and public theologian, she called it the 500-year church rummage sale, right? Where every 500 years, the church goes through a major shift. The last one was the Protestant Reformation. Guess how many years ago that was? It's about 500 years ago, right? My big question for these conversations, when we talk about how terrible the church is doing, is when do we start talking about hope? When do we start talking about hope? Because the thing is, we follow a God of hope. Now, that doesn't mean we can be dysfunctional and stick our head in the sand and ignore problems that are present. We do have to face our challenges head on, but we can do so with a spirit of hope. And I think people in church circles, when talking about this shift that we're going through, forget about hope. Because in our culture, we've had it our way for so long that we don't quite know what to do now that we're in a period where everything doesn't go our way. Now, you guys are going to be stunned to hear this, so get ready, all right? This July, when I was at General Assembly in Memphis, I made a new friend. I know, right? Imagine me talking to somebody I don't know and making a new friend. His name is Lauren Richmond. He's a pastor, he's a writer, he's a podcaster, he's all around good guy. And a few weeks ago, Lauren wrote an article about how nobody is coming to save anyone's church. So often, churches look outside of their own organization, a new consultant, a new program, a new pastor. Let's not have that conversation, right? Waiting for a new group of people to just bustle in from the outside who are not currently attending the church and say, these people right here, they will save us. And that's just not true. Now, let me say really quick, I don't think we're in dire straits around here. I don't think we need saving from failing or anything like that. But it wasn't that long ago where we felt like we were a little bit financially, right? The last couple of years have been rough. This year, things are trending upward. We have a lot more hope, right? But not long ago, it was pretty scary. It was pretty discouraging. But what did we do? We pulled together. We made a lot of progress over the last year. But also, here's the thing we need to hear. We can't rest on past accomplishments for our future needs. We have to continue to look ahead. Now, last week we talked about how we're smaller than we used to be, how churches everywhere are smaller than they used to be. And part of me laments that. I think we all do. But part of me asks, so what? So what? Just because we're smaller, like all churches everywhere are, that doesn't mean that we're not vibrant, healthy, loving faith community that can still live out its mission in this community in this time. Because, friends, that is still our call. That call has not changed. To be a place of welcome, of radical hospitality, to be a place that shares God's love with the people around us, because God is still here. Hope is still here. And hope, friends, is definitely our economy in this church. The thing about hope, though, is that it's an active thing. Nothing about faith is passive, hope included. And to continue to hope, to continue to live out our mission in this community, to share God's love and acceptance for all people, to be a vibrant, healthy worship and fellowship space, we need to continue to do a few things along the way. Now, the people in Marion, as they were revitalizing their town, they asked and followed 4 things. Now, these are things that developed. I don't think they started at the starting line and said, we're going to do these 4 things. This is a process that developed for them over time. But these things are very applicable to church work, to our church. Now, the first one is humbly ask what's not working. Now, that's a really hard thing to do, isn't it? It's a really hard thing to do. It requires honesty, but it is the first step in sustainability, to look around and examine the way we do things and say, what's not working? It's not a judgment. It's not an accusation. It's an observation. And 2, what's the smallest change to address that struggle? So often we think... So often we think we have to do big, grand things to fix something, to make them count. But what's sustainable? What ultimately has the most impact on our everyday life? Small things that add up over time and make a huge difference. Small things matter in our church, in our relationships, in our lives. The third thing that they suggest is to do that thing. So when you look at what's not working, and when you come up with a small change to address that challenge, then you actually do that thing. And that's hard, right? I mean, it's hard. But here's the thing, we don't have to wait for permission from somebody to do that thing. We don't have to wait until conditions are perfect. Lauren reminds us that momentum grows from doing one small, faithful thing today. And the 4th thing that they recommend is that you repeat that process. It's not a one and done thing to create a sustainable, healthy environment. It's a continual repeating of the same process, an intentionality in being sustainable. Having a culture of renewal and curiosity about what can be done is essential for the long term. It's also a pretty healthy outlook for the here and now, because over time, small things add up. The Spirit multiplies them slowly and rhythmically, like a mustard seed sprouting into a tree. Jesus used this example of a mustard seed because everyone understood already how small it is, right? It's teeny tiny. And not only did they understand how small it was, but they also understood what it could do. It was a common seed. It was a common plant in that area all the time. So they understood its potential. They understood its role in the environment. They knew it was its possibilities that were the most important thing about it, not its appearance, not its smallness. It's a small thing. It's ordinary. It's regular. It's not flashy. It's not something that's going to bring a lot of attention, but it has a lasting impact. It has a lot more power than one would think it would have based on observation alone. There's an invitation here in this parable and in this story about Marian, if we want to go. It's an invitation to value what we often overlook and look and see what is possible. An invitation to trust that God is present, that God is the bringer of hope, that God is ready, that God is ready, that God is ready to do great things with small, generous actions. Friends, imagine where this could lead us. Amen. I invite you to pray with me this morning. Lord, we give you thanks for the word that you hide like a treasure in our heart, for the leaven which is able to penetrate to every area of our life, for the seed that is able to grow into a mighty plant. Help us to value that which you have given us, to make following Christ the most important thing in our daily lives, to concentrate above all upon doing your will and sharing your love and the good news you have proclaimed through Jesus with one another and with the world. We give you thanks, God, for the wonders of our past and for the new things that you continue to do in our midst. We praise you for the teachings of the prophets, for the law you revealed unto Moses, for the grace and the love that you poured out and continue to pour out through Christ, and for the guidance, the strength, and the wisdom, the peace and the joy that you bestow upon us through your Spirit. Help us to value both the old and the new and become worthy teachers of the lessons of your eternal kingdom.